My name is Gina Aubrey. I am 40 years old and I have worked as a paralegal for 11 years. I raised my daughter alone since she was 7. I have read thousands of contracts, depositions, and court filings. None of that prepared me for what my sister did to my child. 4 months ago, my mother died. She left everything to my daughter Sophie. The house, the savings, $24,000. Debra, my older sister, did not get a cent, and she decided that was something she could fix. She called it a family meeting. She told Sophie it was about healing, about closure. When Sophie walked into our mother's living room that Saturday afternoon, there were no casseroles on the counter and no tissues on the table. There was a lawyer in a grey vest, a stack of documents, and 3 adults staring at a 21-year-old girl who came alone. But my sister made one mistake. She thought I would not find out until it was too late. What happened in that living room over the next 40 minutes rearranged our family from the inside out. And it started the moment I walked through the front door. Welcome back to the Forgotten Daughter. This is a place where real family stories unfold. The betrayals, the boundaries, and the quiet strength it takes to protect the people you love. If this story speaks to you, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. My mother, Ruth Aubrey, lived in a small yellow house on Maple Drive in Millbrook, Ohio. She had been a 3rd-grade teacher for 31 years. She retired at 63, and she spent the next 9 years tending her garden, reading mystery novels on the porch, and baking lemon bars for every neighbor within 3 blocks. She had 2 daughters. Debra, the oldest, was 45. I was the younger one by 5 years. Growing up, Debra was the charming one, the one who could talk her way into anything. Our father adored her. He called her his golden girl. He called me his quiet one. When he passed 16 years ago, Debra got most of his attention. I got the leftovers. Mom saw it differently. She never said it outright, but she noticed things. She noticed that Debra visited when she needed money. She noticed that I visited when she needed company. She noticed that when her health started to decline, it was not Debra who showed up with groceries at 7 o'clock in the morning. Mom always said Debra had the charm and I had the patience. I thought that was just something mothers say, something soft and meaningless to balance the scales. But 4 months after her funeral, sitting in my kitchen with a stack of bank records and a letter I was never supposed to find, I understood what she really meant. She meant that patience was the thing that would hold this family together when charm tried to tear it apart. What I did not know yet was how much patience I would need. Sophie moved in with my mother 2 years before she died. She was 19, halfway through nursing school and living off financial aid and a part-time job at a pharmacy. I could not afford to help much. Paralegal salaries in small-town Ohio do not stretch far, and I was still paying off my own student loans. But Mom had a spare room, and Sophie needed somewhere stable. What started as a practical arrangement turned into something deeper. Sophie cooked dinner every night. She drove Mom to her appointments. She sat on the edge of the bed and read aloud from the mystery novels Mom could no longer hold steady. When Mom had bad nights, Sophie slept in the chair beside her. Debra visited 3 times in those 2 years. Each time she walked through the front door, glanced around the house like she was appraising it, and asked about the finances. She never asked how Mom was feeling. She asked about the house. The second visit, Debra pulled me aside in the hallway. "Has Mom updated her will recently?" I told her I did not know. She said, "Someone should look into that." Then she poured herself a glass of wine and left before dinner was ready. Sophie told me once while we were folding laundry in Mom's living room that she overheard Debra on the phone in the backyard. She was talking to Rye about the property value. Sophie said she closed the window. I told Sophie not to worry about it. I told her to focus on school and on Grandma. I told her the right things would happen when the time came. I believed that I had to. Mom died on a Tuesday in January. Pancreatic. It had been quick at the end. The hospice nurse said she went peacefully, but I do not think anyone who watched their mother's breathing slow to nothing would use that word. The funeral was small, 42 people in a church that held 300. Sophie stood beside me the entire time. Debra arrived 20 minutes late wearing sunglasses. She never took off. The will was read the following Thursday in the office of Harold Kimball, Mom's estate attorney. Sophie, Debra, and I sat across from his desk. The room smelled like old carpet and coffee that had been sitting too long. Harold read it plainly. The house on Maple Drive, along with all savings accounts totaling $24,000, would go to Sophie Marie Aubrey. There was a line underneath that I will never forget. To my granddaughter Sophie, who was here when it mattered. Debra did not get the house. She did not get the savings. She did not get $1. I watched her face. She did not cry. She did not shout. She sat perfectly still, her hands flat on her thighs, her jaw tight. She looked at Harold like he had read the wrong document. Harold asked if there were questions. Debra said no. She stood up, buttoned her coat, and walked out without looking at either of us. Sophie whispered, "Is she okay?" I said, "Give her time." That silence lasted exactly 48 hours. Thursday evening, my phone rang. "Debra, we need to talk about this." Her voice was flat, rehearsed, like she had been practicing the sentence in the mirror. "Talk about what the will. Gina, it is not fair." Mom was not thinking clearly when she wrote it. Sophie lived there. She had influence. This should have been split between us. I sat down on the edge of my bed. I could hear Rye in the background, his voice low and steady, feeding her lines. "Debra, this was Mom's decision. She was evaluated by her doctor. The attorney confirmed her capacity. The will is valid. I am her daughter, her firstborn. You think she would leave me nothing? I think she left what she wanted to leave." She hung up. 2 hours later, Sophie called. She sounded shaken. "Aunt Debra just called me. She said Grandma was confused when she made the will. She said, 'I need to do the right thing.'" I closed my eyes. I pictured Mom's cedar jewelry box on her dresser, the one she kept since before I was born. The smell of cedar every time she opened it. Inside were clip-on earrings and a ruby brooch she wore to church. That box held everything she considered precious. She had considered Sophie precious. Sophie listened to me. Grandma wrote exactly what she wanted. Debra is hurting, but that does not give her the right to rewrite Mom's wishes. Sophie was quiet. Then she said, "This is not over." I said, "I know." I sat in the dark for a long time after that call. I was already thinking about what to do next. Not because I was afraid, because I had read enough legal disputes to recognize when someone was building a case. Monday morning, I walked into Morrison and Finch, the firm where I had worked for 9 years. I went straight to the office at the end of the hall. Robert Webb was 55, a senior estate attorney and the closest thing I had to a mentor. He wore reading glasses on a chain and drank his coffee black. He had reviewed more contested wills than anyone in the county. "I need a favor," I said. He leaned back. "Personal or professional?" "Both." I told him everything. Mom's will, Debra's reaction, the phone calls, the pressure on Sophie. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took off his glasses. "The will is clean. Harold Kimball drafted it. Capacity evaluation on file. 2 witnesses. Then it stands. Debra can challenge, but she will lose. She is not going to court Robert. She is going to pressure Sophie until Sophie caves." He nodded slowly. "That is the more common play. I want you to represent Sophie officially. I want Debra to know there is counsel on the other side." Robert agreed. He also suggested something I had not considered. An audit of Mom's bank accounts for the last 12 months. "If there is a pattern of financial exploitation," he said, "it changes the conversation." I signed the paperwork that afternoon. Robert filed the request. Before I left his office, I told Sophie the same thing I would tell her every day for the next 3 weeks. "If anyone asks you to sign anything, you call me first. You do not read it. You do not touch it. You do not pick up the pen. You call me." She promised. 2 weeks later, Robert called. "Gina, you need to see this." The bank records arrived in a manila folder. 6 pages. Robert had flagged the relevant lines with yellow tabs. 6 withdrawals from Mom's savings account over 8 months. 3,000 here, 2,000 there, 1 for 5,000. Total $15,000. All while Mom was in hospice or too weak to leave the house. 3 of the withdrawal slips had her signature or something close to it. I had seen Mom's handwriting my entire life. She wrote a narrow cursive that tilted slightly to the right. These signatures were too upright, too deliberate. The strokes were thicker, like someone pressing hard to imitate a hand that no longer had strength. Robert pointed to the dates. The last withdrawal was 9 days before she died. Your mother was on continuous pain management at that point. She could barely hold a cup. I sat in his office and felt the floor tilt. Not because I was surprised, because I had suspected it for months. And now I was holding the proof. "Can we pursue this?" I asked. Forgery of a financial document is a felony in Ohio, but criminal charges are a nuclear option. If you file, it becomes public. It becomes permanent. I am not filing anything yet. He looked at me over his glasses. Then what are you doing? Waiting for what? For her to make a move loud enough that she cannot walk it back. Robert did not argue. He made copies. He certified them. He slid them into a manila envelope with the audit report and the will. I took that envelope home and locked it in my briefcase. I slid the briefcase to the back of my bedroom closet. I saved everything, every page, every timestamp. Debra did not wait. She worked the phones like a campaign manager. She called Uncle Tom first, Mom's younger brother in Pennsylvania, then Aunt Linda, Dad's sister in Kentucky, then every cousin close enough to have an opinion, and far enough away not to know the facts. Her version went like this. Sophie, a 21-year-old nursing student, had manipulated their elderly grandmother into rewriting the will. Gina, the bitter divorced sister, was backing her up because she wanted the money funneled through her daughter. The will was the result of undue influence, and the family should demand a correction. It was clean. It was coordinated. And by the end of the second week, my phone had gone mostly silent. Cousin Ellen called. Ellen was 38, the daughter of my late Uncle Bill. She lived 2 towns over and had always been the fair one in the family. "Gina, is any of this true?" Debra says Sophie pressured Aunt Ruth. Ellen, Sophie was the only one who showed up. She cooked, she cleaned, she drove Mom to every appointment. Debra visited 3 times in 2 years. Ellen paused. "I want to believe you, but Debra sounds really hurt." "She is, but hurt does not mean right." Ellen said she would stay out of it. That was better than I expected. Then Brenda weighed in. Brenda was Ray's mother, Debra's mother-in-law. She posted on Facebook that some people take advantage of their elders and call it love. She did not name Sophie. She did not have to. That same week, Ray showed up at a gas station in town. Word got around that he was back. Debra had told everyone he was gone for good. Apparently, inheritance money was enough to bring him home. Have you ever had family turn on you over money? Because I have, and it taught me that silence is not peace, it is a countdown. Ray Kessler showed up at my front door on a Wednesday evening, 7:12. Sophie was at the library studying for her clinical exams. He knocked 3 times hard. I looked through the peephole and saw his truck in the driveway, engine still running. I did not open the door. I spoke through it. "Can I help you, Ray?" "Open the door, Gina. We need to talk about what? You know what? This inheritance mess. It has gone far enough." I leaned against the doorframe. "If you have legal concerns about the will, you can contact Robert Webb at Morrison and Finch. He represents Sophie." A pause, then a laugh, low and dry. "Legal concerns. This is family, Gina, not a courtroom. It became a courtroom the moment Debra started calling everyone we share blood with to tell them my daughter is a thief." He did not answer right away. I heard him shift his weight on the porch boards. "Debra is hurting. He said your mother left her nothing. That is cruel. My mother left what she chose to leave. If you want to discuss cruelty, we can talk about the $15,000 that disappeared from her account while she was dying. Silence. I did not elaborate. I did not need to. He walked back to his truck, sat in the driver's seat, did not turn on the headlights. He sat there for 20 minutes before he pulled away. I stood at the kitchen window and watched the taillights disappear down the street. My hands were steady, but my chest was tight. Ray was not dangerous, but he was the kind of man who believed volume was authority and presence was power. He was wrong about both. The following week, Robert called me into his office. He had the full audit report finalized and a certified copy of the will from probate court. He slid a manila envelope across the desk. It was thick, heavy in the hand. The way things are heavy when they carry consequence. "Everything is in there," he said. "Certified will, capacity evaluation, bank statements, withdrawal slips with the flagged signatures, and a letter from the bank confirming the account holder was under hospice care during the withdrawal period." I picked it up, held it with both hands. "What do you want to do with this?" he asked. "Hold it. For how long?" "Until the right moment." Robert took off his glasses and folded them on the desk. "Gina, I have been doing this for 23 years. The right moment is usually the one that feels wrong. It is the one where you would rather stay quiet, but you speak. It is the one where the room is full of people who are convinced you are the villain. I know, and you are ready for that. I have been ready since the bank records came back." He nodded. "One more thing, the signature analysis. I sent the 3 flagged withdrawal slips to a forensic document examiner. Preliminary opinion. The signatures do not match the known handwriting samples of Ruth Aubrey. That is not a court ruling, but it is enough to open a criminal referral." I put the envelope in my briefcase. I drove home with it on the passenger seat. That night, I locked it in the closet next to the first set of copies. 2 envelopes now, 1 truth, 1 plan. I locked the briefcase in my closet. I knew I would need it. Sophie came home from campus that Thursday with red eyes and a voice that cracked on every other word. "She came to school, Mom." I sat down my coffee. "Who?" "Aunt Debra. She was in the parking lot by the nursing building. She waited for me after my clinical." Sophie sat on the couch and pulled her knees up. She was 21, but in that moment she looked 12. She stood there with her arms crossed. My friend Kayla was right next to me, and Debra said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You took what belongs to me." I felt my jaw tighten. "What did you do?" I walked away. I did not say anything. I just kept walking and she yelled after me. Sophie paused. Her voice broke. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you." I sat next to her, put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me the way she used to when she was small and the world got too loud. "She is lying, Sophie. Grandma wrote exactly what she wanted. She wrote it clearly with a lawyer, with witnesses. Grandma chose you because you earned it. Every dinner, every drive, every night in that chair beside her bed." Sophie wiped her eyes. Kayla asked me afterward what that was about. I could not even explain. "You do not have to explain. Not to Kayla, not to Debra, not to anyone." She nodded, but her hands were still shaking. That night, Sophie asked me something I was not ready for. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Leftover pasta, 2 glasses of water, the kind of dinner you eat when you do not have the energy to cook or the appetite to enjoy it. Sophie pushed her fork around the plate. Then she looked up. "Maybe I should just give it to her." I sat down my glass. "All of it," she said. "The house, the money. If it makes her stop, if it makes the family stop talking about me like I am some kind of con artist." She shook her head. "I cannot do this, Mom. I am in the middle of my final clinical rotation. I have boards in 5 weeks. I cannot keep looking over my shoulder for Aunt Debra in a parking lot." I did not answer right away. I looked at my daughter and I thought about my mother. I thought about the last time I visited 3 days before she died. She could barely keep her eyes open, but she squeezed my hand and said, "Sophie is the one who stayed." She said it like a fact, like weather. "No," I said. Sophie looked at me. You are not signing anything. You are not giving anything away. Grandma left this to you because she wanted you to have it. Not because she forgot about Debra, because she remembered everything Debra did and still chose you. Sophie was quiet for a long time. I am going to fix this, I said, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She nodded. I trust you. Good. Now eat your pasta. She almost smiled. That was enough. The next morning, Debra sent a group text to the whole family. The message went out at 8:43 on a Monday morning. I know because I was pouring coffee when my phone buzzed 4 times in a row. Debra had created a group text. Me, Sophie, Ellen, Uncle Tom, Aunt Linda, Brenda, and Ray. Family meeting this Saturday at Mom's house, 2 in the afternoon. We need to settle this like adults. Everyone is welcome. This is about doing right by Mom's memory. Sophie forwarded it to me. Are you going? No, I said. You are. She stared at me. You are going to walk in there, sit down, and listen. You are not going to argue. You are not going to defend yourself. And you are absolutely not going to sign a single piece of paper. What if they have a lawyer? That question told me everything. Sophie was not naive. She had grown up watching me read depositions at the kitchen table. She knew what a coordinated effort looked like. If they have a lawyer, you sit and listen. You say, I need time to review this with my own counsel. That is it. That is the only sentence you need. She nodded slowly. And where will you be? Close. I called Robert that afternoon. Saturday, 2 o'clock. Mom's house on Maple Drive. If they try anything, I need you there. Robert was quiet for a moment. How close do you want me? In your car outside. I will text you. You walk in. Done. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I reviewed the certified will. I organized the bank records. I reread the forensic examiner's preliminary report. I put everything in my briefcase, organized by tab, indexed by date. Saturday came faster than I wanted it to. 2 days before the meeting, Thursday evening, Sophie called from Mom's house. She had been packing up some of the bedroom closets, sorting through coats and scarves and old photo albums. Mom, I found something. Her voice was careful. Not upset. Careful. In Grandma's cedar box, the jewelry one. I was looking for her pearl brooch to wear Saturday. I lifted the velvet lining, and there was a letter underneath. My chest tightened. A letter in Grandma's handwriting addressed to me. I drove to Maple Drive in 14 minutes. Sophie was sitting on the edge of the bed, the cedar box opened beside her. The smell hit me the second I walked in. Cedar and dust, and something faintly sweet, like lotion. The smell of my mother's room. The letter was 2 pages. Yellow legal paper, blue ink, narrow cursive, tilting slightly to the right. It was unmistakably Mom's hand. Sophie gave it to me without a word. The letter began. Dear Sophie, if you are reading this, then the will has been read and Debra is angry. I know because I know my daughter. I read the rest standing in the hallway with my back against the wall. She wrote that Debra had borrowed $8,000 over 15 years. She wrote that none of it was ever repaid. She wrote that when she was in the hospital for a week in March, 2 years before she died, someone withdrew money from her savings using her name. I know who. I did not confront her because I did not have the strength for that fight. But I changed my will because love should not be a debt someone collects on. The last line read, Show this to your mother. She will know what to do. I read the letter once more. Then I folded it, slid it back into the envelope, and put it in my briefcase. Sophie said she knew the whole time. I said, yes, she did. Friday morning, I sat across from Robert in his office with the letter on the desk between us. He read it twice. Then he sat it down and pressed his fingers together. This is consistent with the bank records, he said. Your mother documented the pattern herself. 8,000 in loans, 0 repayment, unauthorized withdrawals. She was aware and chose not to confront. She chose to protect herself the only way she could through the will. Robert nodded. This letter will not hold up as a legal affidavit, but as corroborative evidence, it is strong. It establishes intent. It confirms the financial exploitation, and it explains the disinheritance. I am not planning to use it in court. He looked at me. Then where? In the room in front of the people Debra convinced that Sophie stole from our mother. Robert understood. He always did. We spent the next 2 hours organizing the certified will, the bank audit, the forensic handwriting analysis, Mom's letter. Everything went into my briefcase in tabbed sections. Robert printed a summary sheet, 1 page listing each piece of evidence with dates. Before I left, I called Sophie. You are going to walk in at 2. Sit in the armchair by the window. Do not sit on the couch next to Debra. If anyone hands you a document, say, I will review this with my counsel. If it gets heated, stay quiet. I will be there when you need me. She paused. I am scared. I know, but you are not going to be alone. I promise. That night, I set the briefcase by the front door. I checked it twice before I went to bed. I checked it again at 5 o'clock in the morning. Saturday morning, 6:47. I was already awake. Sophie wore a white blouse and dark slacks. She pinned Mom's pearl brooch to her collar. She looked older than 21. She looked like someone walking into something she did not choose but refused to run from. We drove separately. Sophie arrived first, parking at the curb. I parked 2 blocks east behind the hardware store where nobody from the family would see my car. Robert was already in position. Silver sedan 1 block north. Engine off. Phone in hand. I texted him at the house. 2 vehicles I do not recognize. He replied, Copy. Standing by. From where I sat, I could see the front of Mom's house, Sophie's car at the curb, Ray's black truck in the driveway, and a dark gray sedan I had never seen before. That was the lawyer's car. I watched Sophie walk up the front steps. She paused at the door, touched the pearl brooch on her collar. Then she opened the door and went inside. I sat in my car. My hands were on the steering wheel. My briefcase was on the passenger seat. The clock on the dashboard read 158. 2 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Sophie, there is a man I do not know. Gray vest, briefcase. He is sitting at the dining table. I typed back. Do not sign anything. Listen only. I am close. She replied, Okay. I texted Robert. They brought a lawyer. You are up. Wait for my signal. He replied, Ready. The wind blew a napkin across the lawn. The curtains in the front window were drawn. Inside that house, 3 adults were about to pressure my daughter into giving away everything my mother had left her. I sat there. I breathed. I waited. Not much longer now. Sophie told me afterward what happened in the first 10 minutes. She walked into the living room and saw Debra on the couch, legs crossed, hands folded, calm, composed, like she had rehearsed this for days. Ray stood by the window with his arms crossed, looking out at the street. He did not say hello. Brenda, Ray's mother, sat in the recliner near the bookshelf. She wore a beige cardigan and a face that said she had already decided who was guilty. And at the dining table, a man Sophie had never seen before. Mid-40s, grey vest over a white shirt, a leather folder open in front of him. His name was Neil Pratt. He was not an estate attorney. He was a general practice lawyer and a friend of Ray's from the VFW. There was a manila envelope on the coffee table, tan sealed, waiting. Debra smiled. Sophie, honey, sit down. We are so glad you came. Sophie sat in the armchair by the window like I told her. She kept her purse on her lap and her hands still. We want to resolve this. Debra continued. Mom would not have wanted us fighting. This is about family. Sophie said nothing. Neil cleared his throat. He opened the manila envelope and slid a document across the coffee table towards Sophie. This is a voluntary relinquishment of your rights to the estate assets, he said. Standard procedure. Once you sign, the assets transfer to your aunt, and we can all move forward. Would you have walked into that room? Would you have sat in that chair, 21 years old, facing 3 adults and a lawyer, knowing they wanted something from you that you were not supposed to give? Sophie stayed in the chair. She did not reach for the paper. Not yet. Neil slid the document closer, tapped it with one finger. It is straightforward, Sophie. 2 pages. Signature on the last line. We can have this resolved in 5 minutes. Sophie picked it up. She read the first paragraph, then the second. Her face did not change. This says, I give up all rights to the house and savings. It also says, I waive my right to contest any future claims against the estate. Neil nodded. Correct. It is a clean transfer. Clean for who? Nobody answered. Debra uncrossed her legs and leaned forward. Sophie, your grandmother was sick. She was not thinking straight. I am her daughter. I took care of her for years. You are 21. What are you going to do with a house and $2,000? Let me take care of it. That is what family does. Brenda chimed in from the recliner. Your grandmother would have wanted it this way. Sophie set the paper down on the table. She looked at Debra, then at Neil, then at Ray, still standing by the window like a bouncer at a bad restaurant. I need to read this with my own attorney. Neil shook his head. There is no need for that. This is a simple family agreement. I said I need to read it with my own attorney. The room went quiet. Debra's smile thinned. Ray turned from the window. Brenda shifted in the recliner. 3 adults staring at a 21-year-old girl. The same girl who had cooked dinner every night for 2 years and slept in a chair beside her dying grandmother. They looked at her like she was the problem. And then there was a knock at the front door. I opened the door myself. I did not knock twice. I did not wait to be invited. The living room was exactly as Sophie had described. Debra on the couch, Ray by the window, Brenda in the recliner, Neil at the dining table with his leather folder, and my daughter in the armchair sitting upright with her hands in her lap and the pearl brooch catching the light from the window. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, set my briefcase by my feet. Sorry I am late. Debra stood up halfway, then sat back down. This is a family meeting, Gina. You were not invited. My daughter was. Sophie is an adult. She can handle this on her own. She is handling it fine. That is exactly why she did not sign. I walked to the armchair and stood beside Sophie. I put my hand on her shoulder. She exhaled. I felt it through her blouse. Rai stepped forward. Gina, nobody wants a fight. We are trying to settle this the right way. Then you will not mind that I am here to help settle it. Neil closed his leather folder. Ma'am, this is a private discussion. I looked at him. A private discussion with a lawyer present, a legal document on the table, and no independent counsel for the signatory. That is not a discussion. That is a pressure campaign. Neil's jaw tightened. I sat down on the arm of Sophie's chair, crossed my ankles, folded my hands. I did not open the briefcase. Not yet. So I said, Who wants to start? Nobody spoke. The clock on the mantel ticked. It was the same clock that had been in this room since I was 6 years old. Mom wound it every Sunday. I waited. Debra recovered first. She always did. Composure was her sharpest tool, and she used it the way other people used charm. We are all here because of Mom, she said. She pressed her palms together, and I think we owe it to her memory to resolve this fairly. Sophie is young. She does not need the burden of a house and a large sum of money at 21. I am offering to take responsibility for the estate, manage it, and make sure everyone benefits. Everyone, meaning you, I said. Everyone, meaning the family. Ray moved from the window to the edge of the dining table. Gina, you are making this harder than it needs to be. Am I? Debra is the eldest. She was Mom's first child. She has every right to. She has no right, I said quietly. Not to this house. Not to that money. Mom made her choice, and the court has certified it. Neil tried again. The document Sophie was reviewing is entirely voluntary. No one is forcing. Mr. Pratt. I said his name and watched him flinch. He had not introduced himself. I had gotten it from Robert, who had looked up the sedan's plates that morning. You are not a certified estate attorney. You are a general practice lawyer who handles DUI cases and property disputes. You were not retained by Sophie, and you did not provide independent legal advice. Anything she signs in this room without her own counsel present is contestable. The room went very still. Neil looked at Ray. Ray looked at Debra. Debra looked at the carpet. I was not finished, but I did not rush. In my experience, the most effective thing you can say after a statement like that is nothing at all. So, I let the silence do its work. The front door opened without a knock. Ellen Aubrey walked in carrying a bottle of wine and a confused expression. She wore a denim jacket, and her hair was still damp like she had rushed out of the shower. She stopped in the entryway, looked at the dining table, looked at Neil, looked at the document still sitting on the coffee table. What is going on? Debra stood up. Ellen, thank you for coming. We are just finishing up some family paperwork. Ellen set the wine on the hallway table. You told me this was dinner. You said you were making Mum's pot roast and we were going to go through some old photos. We are. After Ellen looked at Sophie. Sophie met her eyes and shook her head once, a tiny motion, but Ellen caught it. Debra, who is that man? She pointed at Neil. He is helping us with some legal formalities. Legal formalities at a family dinner. Brenda spoke from the recliner. It is nothing, Ellen. Just some paperwork Sophie needs to sign. Ellen turned to me. Gina, what is happening? My sister organized a meeting with a lawyer to pressure Sophie into signing away her inheritance. No independent counsel, no prior notice. Sophie is 21 years old, and she was sitting in this room alone until I arrived. Ellen's face changed. She looked at Debra, then at the document on the table, then at Neil. She crossed her arms. Nobody told me there would be lawyers here. Debra's composure cracked. It is not like that. Then what is it like? Ellen said, because from where I am standing it looks exactly like that. That was the moment I reached for my phone. I typed one word to Robert. Now 90 seconds later there was a firm knock at the front door. 3 knocks. Measured professional. I stood up and walked to the door. I opened it. Robert Webb stood on the porch in a charcoal suit, a leather briefcase in his left hand. He was 6'2", grey at the temples, and had the kind of face that made courtrooms go quiet. Debra was on her feet before he crossed the threshold. Who is this? I stepped aside, looked at my sister, and I said it the way I had been practicing in my head for 3 weeks. Funny, she brought someone too. Robert walked in. He did not shake hands. He did not smile. He set his briefcase on the dining table directly beside Neil's leather folder. Robert Webb, Estate Law. I represent Sophie Aubrey in all matters related to the Ruth Aubrey estate. Neil looked up. His face went white. I did not know if he recognized the name or the firm, but he recognized the weight. Are you retained by the beneficiary? Neil asked. I am. Neil started gathering his papers slowly. The sound of pages sliding together was the only noise in the room. Debra pointed at Robert. This is ridiculous. We are trying to handle this as a family. Robert ignored her. He picked up the voluntary relinquishment document from the coffee table. Read it in silence. 30 seconds. Then he set it down. This document purports to transfer the full estate to Debra Kessler without compensation and includes a clause waiving the beneficiary's right to contest. It was drafted without independent counsel for the signatory. He looked at Neil. Who prepared this? I did. Are you certified in estate or probate law? Silence. This document has no legal standing, Robert said, and I advise my client not to review, sign, or acknowledge it. Neil closed his folder. He looked at Ray. Ray did not look back. Robert remained standing. He placed both hands flat on the dining table. Let me be clear about the legal position. The will of Ruth Eleanor Aubrey was executed on March 14, 2024 in the presence of 2 witnesses and a notary public. It was accompanied by a physician's evaluation confirming testamement capacity. The will has been filed and certified by the Trumbull County Probate Court. It is final. He turned to Debra. No voluntary relinquishment, no family agreement, and no pressure applied in this room or anywhere else changes the legal standing of that will. Sophie Aubrey is the sole beneficiary. That is not a suggestion. That is a court-certified fact. Debra's mouth opened. No words came out. Brenda stood up from the recliner. This is a family matter. You have no business here. Robert did not look at her. Ma'am, the moment a lawyer was brought to this meeting and a legal document was placed in front of a beneficiary without independent counsel, it stopped being a family matter. Ellen was standing by the hallway. She had not moved since Robert walked in. Her arms were still crossed, but her expression had shifted. She was watching Debra the way you watch someone you used to trust. Ray picked up his jacket from the back of a chair. He put it on slowly, like a man deciding which exit to use. Neil stood. I think we are done here. He looked at Ray. I told you this was not the way to handle it. Rai said nothing. Neil walked out the front door. His grey sedan pulled away 30 seconds later. 4 people remained in the room and the balance of power had shifted entirely. Debra was still standing, but she was no longer in charge. Debra sat back down on the couch. She pressed her fingers to her temples. This is not about money, she said. Her voice was quieter now, thinner. This is about what is right. Mom would never leave me with nothing. She loved me. She did love you. I said that was never the question. Then why? Debra looked at me. Her mascara had started to smudge at the edges. Why would she do this to me? I did not answer yet. I let the question sit in the room. I let everyone in that room hear the desperation underneath it. Because desperation is different from entitlement. Desperation you can work with. Entitlement you cannot. Brenda leaned forward. Debra gave everything for that family. She planned every holiday. She organized the reunion. She was the one who kept everyone together. She was the one who kept everyone's phone number. I said, that is not the same thing. Brenda's mouth tightened. Debra stood again. She walked to the window where Rai had been standing and looked out at the empty driveway. Ray was gone. His truck was gone. Neil was gone. You have all decided I am the villain, she said. Fine, but I was her daughter too, and I deserved something. Ellen shifted her weight. Sophie looked at her hands. I looked at my sister. I looked at the woman who had called my daughter a thief, who had shown up at her campus and humiliated her in front of classmates, who had forged our mother's signature while she was too weak to hold a pen, and I thought, you are about to find out exactly what you deserve. I reached down and opened my briefcase. I had been waiting 4 months for this moment. The briefcase clicked open. The sound was louder than it should have been. Or maybe it was just that the room was that quiet. I pulled out a manila envelope, the 3rd one. Same color as the one Neil had brought, same size, but this one had yellow tabs and a certified stamp on the corner. I set it on the coffee table right next to the voluntary relinquishment Debra's lawyer had left behind. 6 withdrawals, I said. I slid out the first page. Bank statements, highlighted lines from Mom's savings account over a period of 8 months. I placed it flat on the table. Ellen leaned in. $3,000 in April, $2,000 in June, $5,000 in August, $2,000 in September, $1,500 in October, $1,500 in November. I set each statement beside the last. Total $15,000. All withdrawn while Mom was in hospice care or too ill to leave the house. I pulled out the next page. 3 of these withdrawal slips have a signature. They are supposed to be Mom's. Debra did not move. I sent these to a forensic document examiner. I continued. My voice was level. I was reading from the summary Robert had prepared, but I did not need to. I had memorized every date, every amount. The examiner's preliminary opinion is that the signatures are inconsistent with Ruth Aubrey's known handwriting. The strokes are too upright, too heavy. Mom's hand was weak. These were written by someone whose hand was not. I looked at Debra. She was gripping the edge of the couch cushion. Ellen picked up one of the statements. She held it close. Her eyes moved line by line. When she set it down, her face was different. Debra's hands started shaking. I reached into the briefcase one more time. This was the part I had dreaded. Not because I did not have the evidence, because it was my mother's voice. And once I read it aloud, it could never go back in the envelope. I held up the letter. 2 pages, yellow legal paper, blue ink. Mom wrote this letter and hid it in her cedar jewelry box. Sophie found it 2 days ago. I looked at Sophie. She nodded. I did not read the whole letter. I did not need to. I read the parts that mattered. Debra borrowed $8,000 from me over 15 years. She never paid back a single dollar. I paused. Let it land. When I was in the hospital last March, someone took money from my account. I know who. The room was airless. Ellen had her hand over her mouth. Brenda was looking at the floor. Sophie was watching Debra. I kept reading. I did not confront her because I did not have the strength for that fight. But I changed my will because love should not be a debt someone collects on. I folded the letter and set it on the table between the bank records and the unsigned document. 3 envelopes, 3 truths, 1 table. Debra's voice came out cracked and raw. She was confused. She was sick. She did not know what she was writing. She knew exactly what she was writing. I said she listed dollar amounts. She listed dates. She described the withdrawal while she was hospitalized. This is not confusion, Debra. This is a woman who ran out of time before she ran out of patience. Robert spoke next. Robert stepped forward. He had been standing near the dining table, silent, letting me present the evidence on my terms. Now he spoke. The will of Ruth Aubrey is valid and certified. No family meeting, no voluntary agreement, and no unsigned document changes that. He looked directly at Debra. Regarding the unauthorized withdrawals, $15,000 were removed from your mother's account during a period when she was medically incapacitated. 3 withdrawal slips bears signatures that a forensic examiner has flagged as inconsistent with her known handwriting. He paused. Let it settle. Forgery of a signature on a financial document is a felony in the state of Ohio. We have not filed a criminal referral. Whether we do depends on what happens next. Brenda stood up. You cannot threaten her. She is grieving. Robert did not look at Brenda. He kept his eyes on Debra. You were never entitled to what you did not earn. The sentence landed like a stone in still water. Nobody moved. Nobody exhaled. Debra slammed her palm on the coffee table. The bank statement scattered. You have no right. She was my mother. She was mine too, I said, and she made her choice. Debra turned on me. Her face was red. Her hands were fists. You planned this. You let Sophie walk in here alone so you could humiliate me. I let Sophie walk in here alone because you invited her here alone. I evened the field. Debra's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she said something I did not expect. Her voice broke first, then her posture. Debra sat down, not on the couch, on the floor, right there next to the coffee table like her legs had given up on holding her. Ray left me. The words came out small, stripped of performance, no audience facing grief, just a woman on a living room floor saying the thing she had been hiding for months. He moved out in February, took his name off the mortgage. I have been covering it alone on one income. I am 3 months behind. The bank sent a notice last week. She pressed her hands to her face. I needed that money, Gina. I needed it because I have nothing. I am 45 years old, and I have nothing. The room was silent. Sophie was watching with her hands clasped. Ellen had uncrossed her arms. Even Brenda, who had been bristling since Robert walked in, was still. For a moment, I saw my sister. Not the woman who had forged our mother's signature. Not the one who had cornered my daughter in a parking lot. Just Debra, scared, broke, alone. And then I remembered the signatures. I remembered the $8,000 she never repaid. I remembered Sophie sitting on my couch asking, "Should I just give it to her?" And shaking. "You could have asked," I said. My voice was quiet. You could have picked up the phone and said, "Gina, I am struggling." You could have been honest with me, with Sophie, with anyone. Debra looked up. Instead, you forged Mom's name while she was dying. You showed up at Sophie's school and called her a thief. You organized this meeting to ambush a 21-year-old girl into signing away her future. I let a beat pass. That was your choice, not mine. Ellen was the first to speak. She had been standing near the hallway for 20 minutes, watching everything with the quiet attention of someone who came for pot roast and ended up in a courtroom. She looked at Debra, still on the floor. Then she looked at me. "I came here because Debra told me Sophie was being greedy." Her voice was steady. She said Sophie had manipulated Aunt Ruth. She said you were backing it up to get money through your daughter. Ellen shook her head. I was ready to believe her. She picked up one of the bank statements from the table, looked at it, set it back down. "I see now who was greedy." Debra flinched. Ellen turned to me. "Gina, I owe you an apology. I should have asked you first. I should not have taken her word." "You did not know," I said. "Now you do." Brenda stood up from the recliner. She picked up her purse, buttoned her cardigan, and walked out the front door without a single word. The screen door clapped shut behind her. Ray was already gone. Neil was already gone. Now Brenda. Debra sat alone on the floor of our mother's living room, the house that belonged to Sophie, the house where Mom had wound the clock every Sunday and made lemon bars for the neighbours, the house Debra had tried to take. She did not look up when I stood. I put my hand on Sophie's shoulder. She rose from the chair. "Let's go home," I said. Sophie paused at the door. She looked back at Debra, and for a moment I thought she might say something, but she did not. She just touched the pearl brooch on her collar and walked through the door. Some things do not need words. 3 weeks later, Sophie finalized the estate transfer. The house on Maple Drive was officially hers. The savings account was moved into her name. Harold Kimball handled the last of the paperwork, and Robert filed a formal letter to Debra. The letter was simple. It stated that we were aware of the $15,000 in unauthorized withdrawals. It stated that a forensic handwriting analysis had flagged the signatures. And it stated that if the funds were not returned within 30 days, the matter would be referred to the county prosecutor's office. Debra returned the money in 10 days. She did not call me. She did not write. She wired the funds through a bank transfer with no message attached. $15,000 appeared in Sophie's account on a Tuesday afternoon. Sophie did not celebrate. She set the money aside for renovations. She moved into the house the first week of April. She kept most of Mom's furniture. She repainted the guest room a soft blue and turned Mom's bedroom into a reading room. New shelves, a lamp with a warm bulb, a comfortable chair by the window. She placed the cedar jewelry box on the top shelf. Beside it, a framed photograph of Mom at the kitchen table. Mid-laugh, flower on her apron. The box that once held brooches and old earrings now held something else. A letter, a reminder, a woman's voice, still clear after everything. Gina and Sophie had dinner together every Sunday at the Maple Drive house. Ellen came twice. The first time she brought a pie. The second time she brought her daughter. Nobody mentioned Debra. I told Debra through Robert that she was welcome to have a relationship with Sophie, but through honest conversation, through phone calls and visits, and the kind of effort that does not require a lawyer in the room, no intermediaries, no pressure, no documents on the table. She has not called. Maybe she will. Maybe she will not. I cannot control that. But I can control what I allow into my daughter's life. And from this point forward, the door is open, but the terms are mine. One Sunday in late April, Ellen was at the house for dinner. Sophie was telling her about the reading room, about how she had arranged the shelves by genre the way Grandma used to. Ellen asked about the meeting. Sophie smiled. The look on Aunt Debra's face when Mom walked in. She was completely calm, set down her briefcase like she was arriving at the office, and all she said was, "Funny, she brought someone too." Ellen laughed. "Your mom is something else." "She is," Sophie said. "She always has been." I was in the kitchen washing dishes. I could hear them through the doorway. I did not turn around. I just stood there with my hands in warm water and let my daughter's voice fill the house. The cedar box sat on the shelf in the next room. The pearl brooch was in Sophie's jewelry drawer. The lemon tree Mom had planted in the backyard was starting to bud. Some things you protect because they are valuable. Some things you protect because they are irreplaceable. My daughter is both. Here is what I learned. You do not have to shout to be heard. You do not have to fight to win. Sometimes all it takes is the right documents, the right timing, and the willingness to stand between your child and anyone who would take from her what she earned. Nobody is entitled to what they did not earn. Not by birth, not by age, not by the volume of their voice in a crowded room. Patience is not weakness. Preparation is not revenge. And protecting your family is not something you ever need to apologize for. That is my story. One family meeting, one briefcase, and one sentence that changed everything. If you have ever had to protect someone you love from the people who should have loved them too, share this video, subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next Amen.